下冰雹啦！
なんかうわ
Storm make landfall overnight, hampering Portugal and Spain, with the towering waves and a rainfall total non-sleep in years. In coastal Galicia, when the gust exceeded 115 km/h, rapid apart, burying docks and flooding entire waterfront districts. The sea looked like it was boiling, said fisherman Luis Andrade. As the system moved east, France witnessed catastrophic impacts. Rivers surged beyond their banks, submerged roads and cut dozens of communities. In Normandy, firefighters carried stranded residents from second-floor window and floodwaters reached waist-deep levels within minutes. This was not rain, this was a wall of water, said local residents Maria Dudis. Germany, however, was submerged the storm epicenter, a region already saturated by the weeks and unstable weather, were hit by another barrage and intense downpour. Streets in Calgary and Düsseldorf turned into swelling torrents. Airports were delayed to cancel it as winds battered a runway. With Nice activated an immense flood barrier system, but parts in the historic city still soak knee-deep water as waves pushed inland. The lagoon looked like an open sea, said both Apiro and Marco Bellini. Eastern Europe was not spared. Slovenia and Croatia reported landslides after saturated soil gave way on a steep hillsides. In parts of Balkans, power outage affected tens of thousands. According to climate analyst Dr. Helena Kraus, the storms are behavior reflect water trends. Warmer sea surface and unstable air masses are creating storms that develop further and hit harder. Europe's seen events that used to be rare becoming more frequent. Across the continent, airports in Prague, Zurich, Frankfurt and Milan experienced major delays. Schools in several regions remain closely to safety. Insurance experts estimated early damage could exceed hundreds of millions of euros. Authorities warn strong winds and rising rivers may continue through the next 24 hours, urging people to avoid coastal area and fast-moving waterways. Europe, a powerful storm system has swept across large parts of Europe, bringing torrential rain, hurricane-force winds and widespread disruption from Spain to Germany. Named Storm Isadora by meteorologists, the violent weather left a trail of chaos, flooding streets, uprooted trees and cutting power of hundreds and thousands of homes. In France, wind exceeded 113 km/h, battered the Atlantic coast, treated roofs, rebuilding and forcing to temporarily close it to Eiffel Tower due to safety risks. In Paris, emergency service reported over 500 calls overnight as fallen trees blocked major roads and debris littered the city. It felt like the city is breathing in chaos, said local resident Luca Mori. The wind was howling like a fighting train. Further south Spain, in Dublin, a relentless downpour that triggered flash flooding in parts of Valencia and Barcelona. Submerged cars and flooded metro station. Emergency crew carried out multiple water rescuing in resources as rainfall reached record-breaking levels, over 120 mm in 24 hours, according to the Spanish Meteorological Agency. Several metro stations were forced to close after water cascaded down, stairways were portioned off, rep line was suspended. At least 14 flights were delayed or diverted on Charles de Gaulle and Orly airports and again about 114 km/h battered runway. The 11 tower safety lights temporarily shut down due to the electrical surge in the 17th arrondissement section of scaffolding for the nearby structure, cities collapsing on the streets. Miraculously, no fatalities were reported. 35 people were injured, including 2 firefighters. Paris Major Ana Hidalgo called on an emergency meeting early Wednesday, urging calm to promises with restoration force. Our infrastructure, who pushed to the limits, she said. These events once again demonstrated the urgent need to climate adaptation in urban areas. Meteorologists described the storm as one of the most intense connective systems in decades, caused by the collisions in a humid Mediterranean air with a cold front swept in the Atlantic. This class generation a supercell system production extreme lighting activity to flash flooding across central France. Across social media, dramatic footage showed hail blanket sidewalks like a snow, bases standing in rising water and a lighting bolt sinking near the egg dead termite. A powerful Atlantic storm swept across much of Europe, bringing destructive winds, torrential rain and widespread destruction to normal life from France to Germany, Italy and the Balkans. Meteorological Service reported wind gusts exceeded 115 km/h, calling the storm one of the most aggressive front of the season. In northern France, coastal towns were hit by strong waves crashing against sea walls, forcing authority to carry out evacuations. Paris authority reported hundreds of fallen trees causing delays in transport lines. The winds sounded like a freight train, said residents Eladin Martin. "We never seen such strong gusts in November." Germany recorded some of the heaviest rainfall, with some areas of Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia receiving a month worth of rain in 24 hours. Emergency service responded to dozens of flash flooding incidents. The levels of several rivers, including the upper tributaries of the Danube, rose rapidly and official warning that they could continue to rise. In Germany, the region most affected torrential rain overwhelmed drainage system from Bavaria to North Rhine-Westphalia, rapid flash flooding, inundated basements, underground parking lots and railway tunnels. In Iran, it now is its higher level in the season, forcing to clear soon in shipped roads. "It was terrible," saying Munich shop owner Anna Baker. Within minutes, the water rushed under the doors as a dam had burst. Central Europe faced equally several conditions. Austria and Czech Republic and Slovakia reported landslides after the rain-saturated slope gave way. Train service across the region were suspended due to debris falling in tracks. Emergency service described the workload and almost non-stop. Meanwhile, southern region of Italy and Slovenia experienced flash flood caused by the sudden downpour. Sirens sounded throughout the Venice and high tides combined with the storm surge flooded historic squares. Experts warn that this situation is becoming increasingly common. Storm systems in Europe are intensified, say climatologist Dr. Yelena Karas. Warning ocean and unstable air currents are exacerbating extreme precipitation and winds. Authorities are urging residents to avoid rivers, stay indoors, and prepare to more severe weather and storm continue to move eastward.
Америки в школе.
powerful wave of hailstorm has battered several parts of Europe, leaving communities riddled with damage, disruption and shock. The severe weather struck countries including Italy, France, Germany and Switzerland, where hailstorm the size of a golf ball. In the same areas, a villager fell in devastation force. In northern Italy, vineyards in Lombardy and Veneto were shattered, with the farmers reported crops losses of up to 18%. It's heartbreaking, said vineyard Gula Benager, surrounding the roof of destroyed vines. A whole year work lost in 15 minutes. France also suffered widespread chaos. In Lyon and Dijon, streets turned white into hail-blanket cars and black drains, caused sudden flash floods. Motorways were brought in standstill, and authorities reported dozens of incidents and drivers struggled with the ice conditions. In southern Germany, roofs were smashed and a window shattered, particularly in Bavaria, where emergency crews responded to thousands of calls within hours. Madrid has been plunged into chaos after a powerful storm swept across the Spanish capital, bringing torrential rain, gale force winds and flash flooding that left entire neighborhoods underwater. In just few hours, more than a month, was in rain, overwhelming drainage and transformed streets into fast-flowing rivers. Cars were swept away, metro station flooded, and power lines collapsed, plunging parts of the city in darkness. It was terrified, said Lauza Fernandez, a shop assistant who was received from the standard car. The water rose so quickly, I thought I would make it out alive. Authorities confirmed several fatalities and dozens of injured. Hundreds of residents were evacuated from basements in low-lying homes, and emergency service working around the clock, often wading chest deep through the flood waters. Public transportation suffered severe disruption. Madrid metro network were particularly shut, while train and buses forced long delays. Bordeaux International Airport suspended flight for several hours, stranded passengers amidst scenes of confusion. Tourists were also caught in the chaos, with landmarks like Puerta del Sol and Plaza Major submerged. Videos shared online showed hailstorm bouncing across historic squares and water pouring down the steps of the Prada Museum. In surrounding region, farmland was badly hit. Vineyard and olive groves were inundated just weeks before harvest, threatening significant agricultural losers. Economists warned the storm financial toll could run into hundreds of millions euros. Meteorologists explained that the storm was triggered by a clash between humid Mediterranean air cold Atlantic front intensified by record summer heat. Experts warn that climate change is increasing to frequency such extreme weather events across the Spain, already one of Europe's most climate vulnerable nations. The storm also suffered the European transport network. Rail service hit in Germany and France suffered severe disruption, while airport in Milan, Brussels and Prague experienced significant delay. Trucks were banned from the driving in some areas Italy due to dangerous crosswinds. Meteorologists warn that climate change may be felt to intensify of this storm. We are seeing more frequent and violent weather events across Europe, said Dr. Hans Keller, a climate scientist in Berlin. European leaders planned to carry off rapid relief force. France deployed military engineers to clear blocked roads, while Germany announced emergency funds to support reconstruction efforts. EU officials stressed to need a get continental cooperation to deal with the climate-related disaster. For millions of people across Europe, this storm was not just a night to extreme weather, but another stark reminder of the continent's growing vulnerability to the fury of nature. Powerful Atlantic storm swept across much of Europe, bringing hurricane-force winds, torrential rain, and chaos in several countries, from the Atlantic coast of France and inland cities in Germany. Millions of people forced transport disruption, and emergency service worked at full capacity. In France, wind gusts exceeded 115 km/h, knocked down trees, cut power to more than 400,000 homes, and forced several airports to close. It sounded like a fire train was passing through our streets, said Louis Martin, the resident of Brittany, where roads had blocked overnight. Southern Germany was hit by severe flooding when rivers burst their banks. In Bavaria, rescue evacuated dozens of residents by boat after the local dam threatened to overflow. "We never seen the water rise too fast," explained it firefighters Karl Neumann. Rail service in the region remains severely disrupted. In the Netherlands, authorities temporarily closed its section to famous Altdijk dam due to fear and a coastal wave. Meanwhile, Poland and Czech Republic reported widespread hailstorm that severely damaged cars and groups. Several European nations have been struck by a wave of violent hailstorm, leaving behind the scene of chaos, destruction, and disbelief. From northern Italy to southern Germany, Austria, and parts of France, residents awaked the road crowded in ice, damaged vehicles, and crops destroyed in the fields. Meteorologists say the storm were followed by the clash of moist Mediterranean air with a strong cold front from the northern Europe, creating a supercell condition. Hailstorms, some larger than a golf ball, powdered the city center and rural area alike. In Munich, cars were left with the shattered widespread, while the Bologna, Italy public transport was paralyzed. The hail-covered tram stack. Agriculture Association report severe losses. Vineyard in Tuscany and orange in Austria suffered significant damage, for the farmers described the storm as worse in the decade. One farmer near Verona lamented, "In 10 minutes we lost what we had worked for all year." Emergency services were inundated with vehicles. Dozens of injuries were reported, mainly from the falling hail and the raw accident caused by sudden ice leaks. Firefighters in Austria rescued motorists stranded on a highway blackened in ice, while the France-Rhone Valley flooded added the crisis and a hail-blocked drains. Video shattered widely online showed iconic city squares buried under a layer of ice, sparked disbelief among the viewers. Tourists caught in the storm described as apocalyptic in the like winter in the middle of summer. Experts warn that Europe have seen a rise in extreme hail events in recent years, while the climate change likely intensified weather volatility. Scientists note that the winter air cold most may issue falling stronger storm capable of production large destructive hail. Several metro lines, including lines 1, 4, and 13, experienced major disruption as the water swept in the station. Communities forced long delay with their rapid urgent residents to avoid necessary travel. Power outage left more than 25,000 homes in the dark, particularly in the Paris southern suburbs. The storm also damaged parts in the ELF tower lighting system, forcing engineers to shut it off to safety inspirations. Lighting stuck near Notre Dame Cathedral, creating dramatic by the homeless flash captured by onlookers. Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo urged calm, praising first response to their swift action. "Our city was forced severe weather before, but the intensity of the last night's storm show how climate change is amplifying these events," she said. "We will assist all those affected. They struggled our flood resilience." Meteorologists described the storm as one of the most violent in decades, as a result of a powerful Atlantic depression scalding with warm continental air from the northern France. Experts warn that such extreme weather events could become more frequent if Europe's climate and continues to warm. By morning, Parisians emergency to survive the damaged streets, literally the branches flooded, cave terrace and disrupted train schedule. Yet a month aftermath were also relief. Clear skies returned the city resilient spirit shone through the once again. Major boulevard from Camps Elias and Boulevard Saint Germain turning to Russian River, submerged vehicles including metro station. The Red B and Light 7 were partially suspended water pouring on the tracks, while traffic ground and a half along the scene were rising water tethering the riverbanks and cafes. The water came like in a wave, said cafe owner Matra founder. Those small restaurant near multiple that flooded with a minute. People were screaming, chairs were floating, it felt like a city was drawing. The Louvre Museum and Musée Audrey both activated flood protection barriers, moving earthworks store and ground to the higher floors, a precaution not taken since the Great Flood of 2016. The Eiffel Tower temporarily closed, a light storm struck nearly creating a surreal stain that thinly echoes across the darkened skyline. Authority reported no fatalities, through at least 14 people were rescued from submerged vehicles and several were treated to hypothermia. Emergency crew worked throughout the night and pumped water from the metro tunnels and cleared fallen trees that blocked roads in the 16th and 19th arrondissements. Italy also felt the full force of the storm. In Venice, high tides combined with the storm surge flooded the streets, forced authorities to deploy mobile fruit barriers. Firefighters in Tuscany carried out more than 300 rescue operations after roofs were blown off and power lines collapsed. The ground shock from the wind, said Alessandro Rossi, who lost parts of the workshop. Meteorologist Dr. Sofia Lehmann told the BBC, the storm is unusual in the size of the speed. Warm sea temperatures contributed to its intensity, allowed to the rapidly intensify as moving inland. Across the continent, more than 700,000 households were temporarily without power. Airports in Amsterdam, Munich, Geneva and Milan reported flight cancellation and significant delays. At least a dozen injured have been confirmed, although official fear in the number could rise and the situation continued to be easy. Authorities are urged residents to remain cautious as strong winds and unstable trees could pose a danger. Even after the storm moved eastward, flood warnings remain in effect in several countries. Paris, France, the hit of European most iconic city through the interdisary as a violent overnight storm battered Paris and surrounding suburbs, leaving behind the trail of destruction rarely seen in modern times. The fire tempest driven by the deep Atlantic pressure system unleashed torrential rainfall, different thunder and hurricane-force winds, plunged parts of the capital in the darkness and the chaos. According to the Meteor of France, Paris endured record-breaking rainfall, more than 16 millimeters in just 4 hours, flooding entire districts including Saint-Germain des Prés, Baseline and Latic Quarter. The city again drainage networks strategically to cope, tuning cobblestone streets into fast-moving rivers. It was terrifying, said Claire Depot, who lives near Jared the Lion. Within minutes, water was knee-deep. Cars were floating. The lighting was so bright it felt like it drying for a second. Authority reported over 1,800 emergency calls, with firefighters rescuing dozens trapped in the basements and underground car park. It's the most extreme rainfall ever we recorded in early winter, noted meteorologist Dr. Janice Miller. Further east, Australia, Hungary and the Czech Republic activated national emergency protocols after sudden cold bursts overwhelmed drainage networks. Railway operations reported widespread cancellation with the passengers stranded in station overnight. In the south, Italy, Slovenia and Croatia faced violent thunderstorms had rising levels. Venice activated an immersed flood barriers, but even with the definite rising parts of the city experienced aqua alta flooding. Climatologists watch the storm and usual strength in the tide and high emergency jet streams. Warning seas in the eastern Atlantic are injecting more moisture into these systems, explained climate analyst Dr. Sophia Ricci. When they collide with the cold continental air, the results are explosive. European authorities are urged residents to stay indoors, avoid flooded areas, and expect further disruption as the storm continues in slow destructive march across the continent. Europe is riddled after the wave of powerful storms swept across the continent, bringing hurricane-force wind, torrential rain, hail and flooding from Spain to Poland. Authorities have confirmed dozens of fatalities and hundreds of injured, with hundreds of thousands of households remain without electricity. In France, Paris and Hungary by heavy rain is a lighting force to close up the metro lines and grounded flights to Charlotte the airport. Streets and Lyon and Bordeaux turned into rivers. An emergency crew reported more than 5,000 clouds overnight. Germany also brought to breath with a tornado like a wind north Rhine-Westphalia, ripping roofs to homes and uprooted trees. Rail service were suspended, highway blocked, and the school closed. Official urged residents to stay indoors. It felt like the sky exploded, said Jens Fischer, with so calls lifted to overturned by sudden gusts. In Italy, Venice and Milan were swept by the flash floods, while the Rome enduring the violent hailstorm that shattered windows and damaged cars. Authorities warned to rising river levels in the north, in the fear of further flooding in the Po Valley. Spain forcing massive coastal swells and lightning storms, particularly in Barcelona and Valencia, where the Poland and Czech Republic struggled with the power cuts and transportation shutdowns after gale force winds across Central Europe. Airports across the continent suffered several days while thousands of travelers were stranded with the train station. Insurance provider estimates that the damage could reach billions of euros after gale force winds across Central Europe. Airports across the continent suffered several days with thousands of Mediterranean said the storm system was following the coastal line by Mediterranean air called Atlantic Front, creating a volatile chain reaction across Europe. Scientists want the climate change is making such extreme wide-reaching weather events increasingly frequent. Several European countries are assessing the damage after severe hailstorm swept across the continent, leaving a trail of destruction from France and Italy to Germany, Austria and Switzerland. The storm intensified the unstoppable air masses that collided over Central Europe, produced hailstones the size of a tennis ball that mashed a car, damaged roofs and injured hundreds of people. In northern Italy, cities in Lombardy and Veneto saw streets covered in ice and hospitals territory dozens and partying for cars in a heat injury caused by broken glass. In Bavaria, Germany, cars were left covered in dents and vineyards suffered catastrophic damage. It was like bombing, saying Hans Killer, a farmer's near Munich. In 10 minutes, our entire harvest were destroyed. Austria, also facing chaos in emergency service, responded to collapsed roofs and blocked highways. In Switzerland, tourists in Lorenz and Alps scalped dramatic footage in hailstorms, spilled it up like snowdrifts, transformed summer landscape in winter owns. Flights in Zurich and Geneva airports were delayed and cancelled after hail-damaged parked planes. Meteorologists said the storm was caused by the collisions between the Mediterranean air and the cold northern front, exacerbating the recorded summer heat across Europe. Scientists warn that climate change is contributed to more frequent and destructive hailstorms, and in the continent growing climate-related problems. Agriculture has been hit hardest, heat damaged estimates of hundreds and millions of euros. Vineyard, orange and cornfield across Central Europe has been destroyed, threatening both in local economy and a food supply chain. Insurance companies are already preparing for one of the most expensive weather events in the year. Government has promised to provide assistance and clean up on the aftermath and the initial disaster by sending soldiers in the rural area to clear roads and protect damaged homes from the further rain. However, for the many residents, the storm was stuck remaining in the increasing severity of extreme weather events. Europe is facing yet another night of extreme weather as a powerful storm system tears across the continent, leaving a trail of destruction from Portugal to Poland. Meteorologists describe the system as highly dynamic, following an unusual warm and torrential water-shaped temperature contrast over the continent. In Spain, coastal communities were battered, the wave towering over 10 meters, smashing waterfront, restaurants and flooding seaside roads. Barcelona's port temporarily halted operation due to dangerous crosswind. "I've lived by the sea for 40 years," said fisherman Jordi Matias. "I never seen waves hit the promenade this hard." The storm intensified as it pushed north. France saw widespread outage, more than 300,000 homes plunged into darkness. Emergency crews traveled to assist rural villages blocked by the fallen trees. Heavy rain triggered mud flow in the Pyrenees, forcing evacuation in several valleys. A powerful storm swept across Europe, leaving a trail of destruction. Storm spanned to Germany. Across and the offshore, it is one of the most destructive weather events of the continent in the last decade. In France, coastal towns in Brittany and Normandy were hit by winds up to 115 km/h, which tore roofs, houses, and forced ferry service to be cancelled. In Paris, sudden flooding inundated roofs and led to closure to some section of the metro. It felt like the city was flooded in a matter of minutes, said passenger Julien Maroux when through waist-deep water. Southern Germany, including Bavaria, reported hailstorm the size of a golf ball that smashed car windows and damaged crops. Authorities confirmed several injured, and insurance companies warned that damage in agriculture could run into tens of millions of euros. Spain and Italy also experienced chaos. The streets of Valencia turned into rivers after 100 millimeters of rainfall into 2 hours. In Sicily, faced strong gusts of winds and left thousands of people without electricity. The storm raged all night, recalled Sicilian resident Lucia Romano. "We couldn't sleep, afraid that the roof might collapse."
是得未笑，知。
Farmers estimated the dramatic at a million of euros, especially in vineyards that produced world-famous wines. It's devastating, said Jean-Paul Lefroom, a winemaker near Lyon. In just 10 minutes, the works in the entire season was destroyed. Further east in Croatia and Slovenia, hailstones the size of eggs smashed windows and stripped trees bare. Emergency service worked through the night and cleared debris to restore power to affected areas. Local authority described the damage as serious and extensive. Meteorologists across Europe are linking the surge in severe hailstorm to rising temperature and atmospheric instability. The Mediterranean is warming faster than the global average, warning climatologist Dr. Elena Moretti. This creates ideal conditions to explosive storm to formation of giant hailstorm. The European Severe Laboratory reported that more than 400 hail-related incidents were recorded in 34 hours, of extremely high number of October. Experts warn that such events once considered rare and now becoming more common due to the effects of climate change. Cleanup efforts are underway across the continent, and insurance companies are assessing the extent of the damage. From broken skylights in Rome and flooded streets in Munich and stories fury that what yet another stark reminder that Europe weather is becoming more unpredictable and dangerous than ever before. A powerful storm that swept across Europe caused severe flooding, widespread power outage, and transportation chaos, with the emergency service struggling to cope with one of the most destructive weather events of the year in the region. The system caused by warm Atlantic air colliding with a cold continental front initially hit Portugal and Spain, dumping nearly the month's worth of rain in 24 hours. The streets of Valencia and Porto turned into rivers, with the cars drifting in turbulent waters. It looked like a whole city was drowned, said resident Marta Silva. Moving north, the storm intensified over the France, while gusts of up 114 km/h approached trees and turned on roofs. The level of the Loire and Garonne rivers rose dangerously, forcing the evacuation of residents from low-lying villages. More than 400,000 households were left without electricity. We haven't seen such a rapid rise in the river levels in more than 10 years, said hydrologist Pierre Lemar. France was among the first to be struck. In Brittany, wind gusts surprised 116 km/h, ripping apart roofs and overturned vehicles. Thousands lost power, a high-voltage line collapsed. I felt like a whole house was breathing, said local resident Marianne Duval. The windows were shaking so violently, I thought they would explode. In Germany, the storm diverted relentless rain. Some town in Baden-Württemberg recorded more than 120 mm in just 20 hours, triggering flash floods that overwhelmed drainage system. Firefighters rescued residents from the submerged vehicles and flooded basements. Rail services across the country were heavily impacted, with the debris blocking key routes. Further south, Italy forced the dangerous combined by the heavy rain and intense wind. In Liguria and Tuscany, rivers burst their banks, flooded streets within minutes. A wave of intense hailstorm swept across Europe, leaving behind broken roofs, destroyed crops and devastation communities from Italy to Germany, France and Poland. Meteorologists described the event as one of the strongest hailstorms in the recent year, causing the collisions of cold southern air and a fast-moving cold front that swept across the continent. In Italy, especially the areas around Rome and Emilia-Romagna, the storm was accompanied by thunderstorm winds and hailstones the size of walnuts, which pelted cars and roofs and a thunderstorm roar. In a matter of seconds, it was winter, said local residents Luca DeSantis. The streets turned white, we could hardly see anything. Several motorists were stranded off ice-blocked drainage system, flooded tunnels and city roads. Further north in Bavaria, Germany, the storm caused chaos in communities near the Munich and Augsburg. Cars were damaged, trees were uprooted and public transport was halted. Local authorities received more than 1,200 emergency calls in a few hours.
Konstantin, geh mal.